In the heart of the ancient Middle East, during an era of colossal empires and ruthless kings, the story of a young man begins, one who would become an eternal symbol of faithfulness and courage. His name is Daniel. This is the beginning of a journey marked by mysterious dreams, deadly threats, and a faith that never bowed to the pressures of the world. In this first chapter, we dive into Daniel's origins, understand the historical backdrop that surrounds him, and witness the early trials that shaped him into one of the greatest examples of obedience and integrity in the Holy Scriptures. Get ready for a deep dive into one of the most inspiring biblical narratives, told in rich detail to build your faith and strengthen your hope. Daniel was just a teenager when his life changed forever. He lived in Jerusalem during a time when Judah was constantly threatened by stronger empires. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon led a devastating invasion against Jerusalem, and among the captives taken was Daniel, along with other noble and intelligent young men. They were torn from their families, uprooted from their homeland, and brought into a strange empire with a pagan culture, customs opposed to the teachings of the God of Israel, where everything seemed to demand that faith be abandoned. But for Daniel, this was just the beginning of a divine mission. Though young, he had a heart steadfast in God. He resolved to keep his identity and principles, even if it meant putting his life at risk in the most powerful palace on earth. Upon arriving in Babylon, Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were selected to serve in the king's palace. They were young men without physical defects, good-looking, and full of wisdom, chosen to undergo an intensive 3-year training where they would learn the language, literature, and culture of the Chaldeans. Nebuchadnezzar's intention was to reshape them according to Babylonian standards, turning them into useful advisors for the empire. But Daniel had a firm decision in his heart. He would not defile himself with the royal food and wine. This decision, though seemingly simple, was incredibly bold. Refusing the king's food could be seen as direct disrespect to the monarch himself, a move that could cost him his life. Still, Daniel proposed a test. For 10 days, he and his friends would eat only vegetables and drink water, and then they would be compared to the others. What happened after this period was astonishing. Daniel and his friends looked healthier and better nourished than all the others who ate from the king's table. God honored their faithfulness. Not only did they stand out physically, but God also gave them wisdom, knowledge, and to Daniel specifically, the unique gift of interpreting dreams and visions, something rare and highly valued in the Babylonian court. The chief of the eunuchs, who feared for his own life if the plan failed, was impressed by the results and allowed them to continue with their diet. This powerful episode shows us that faithfulness in small things can bring great honor and recognition, both before God and man. Even under cultural, political, and spiritual pressure, Daniel chose to obey God, and he was rewarded. At the end of their 3-year training, Daniel and his friends were brought before King Nebuchadnezzar. What followed was a remarkable acknowledgement. Among all the young men trained, none compared to them in wisdom, understanding, and discernment. In every matter of wisdom and insight the king consulted them on, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were found 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the entire kingdom. This put them in a place of great influence, but also in constant danger. Being at the center of power meant they were constantly watched, exposed to jealousy, betrayal, and persecution. Yet Daniel remained steadfast. His relationship with God was not shaken by the circumstances. He knew who he was, even in a world that tried to redefine his identity, going so far as to change his name to Belteshazzar, a clear attempt to erase his devotion to the God of Israel. At this point in the story, it's impossible not to reflect on the lessons we can learn from this young man. Daniel shows us that it's possible to live within a system hostile to faith and still remain loyal to God. Not once did he rebel against the authorities, but neither did he compromise his values. He took a stand with wisdom, respect, and courage. This is especially relevant today, where many face environments that challenge their faith daily. Daniel reminds us that it is possible to stay firm without becoming aggressive, and that true influence comes from quiet, consistent obedience to God. Instead of absorbing Babylon's culture, Daniel influenced that system through his unwavering faith. And this is just the beginning. The first chapter of Daniel's journey ends with an extraordinary milestone. Though young and foreign, he was ranked among the wisest men of the most powerful empire on earth. His faithfulness led him to be recognized, honored, and above all, prepared by God for even greater challenges. Little did he know that in the years to come, he would face death decrees, interpret dreams that would alter the course of history, and be thrown into a den of lions. But what sustained him through all of that had already been planted in his early days in Babylon. A solid faith, built on intimacy with God, obedience to divine principles, and the conviction that serving God is worth more than any earthly reward. The young captive would become a prophet, a counselor to kings, and an eternal example of faithfulness. If this story spoke to your heart, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs encouragement to stay strong in difficult times. In the next episodes, we'll dive into prophetic dreams, heavenly visions, and moments of extreme tension and divine rescue. Don't miss it until the next chapter of the story of Daniel, the prophet of unshakable faith.